Hello and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul and I'm here with my co-host Dotsie Vaush. Hi, Dotsie.
Hi out there, everyone.
And it's exciting because today we have our guest actually in person. And Dotsie and I didn't realize, but we have actually all met before. And I didn't realize you'd known Sailesh before. So we're going to talk about that, but I want to tell our audience about him, and then we'll talk about our personal experience with Sailesh. With the current state of our planet, some parents and grandparents worry about what the world will look like for their children. Sailesh Rao has set out to put their minds at ease and fight climate change with compassion, science, and common sense. Sailesh made a hard pivot in 2006 after spending 20 years as a successful engineer in the internet sector. He launched his nonprofit, Climate Healers, and has devoted his life to do just that: heal the climate and the planet and all of us at the same time. We are totally on board, right, Dotsie?
Yes, we are.
Welcome, Sailesh, for driving here from Arizona to be on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
I have a little Sailesh story.
Yeah.
We actually met on the internet, which is pretty perfect, right? Because he was involved in internet launch, basically, and increasing speeds of the internet. So it was probably about a year ago, and we were just getting started with Switch for Good. And I get this wonderful email just at info@switchforgood. And Sailesh and I have never met before, but I know exactly who he is. I've watched some of his talks and some of his videos and been on his website. Big fan. And so I get this email telling me that India's most famous cricket player, Virat Kohli, has gone vegan, and I need to, get on board and get a hold of him and get him to be a part of Switch for Good. And he doesn't start the email out with who he is and what he's done and why I should know him, like some people might have. And in the first email, I didn't even really notice the signature. I don't even think it was his full signature. Maybe he just, signed it Sailesh. It wasn't even the last name. So I thought, oh, what a lovely person. Thank you. Great. Whatever. So like a week later, another cricket player goes vegan or dairy free. And I get another email. And this time I notice the signature and I'm like, hold on. Whoa. I write back. I'm like, is this who I think it is? So
Are you Sailesh Rao?
He's like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about Switch for Good. It was so kind and so generous and so humble. And that's who is with us today.
Thank you, Dotsie.
And I know you from the Animal Liberation Conference, which is a highly activist conference for animals. So you just have a really, you're just interested in so many different areas, but your organization, Climate Healers, is a lot about, healing our environment. And tell us how that started, because you're a very cerebral man, obviously an electrical engineer who worked on, as Dotsie said, improving the internet for us. Thank you for that. Both internet
don't
speeds.
miss dial up.
But here you are with such an open heart for the environment. When did you realize that the environment was in trouble?
2005, December.
What happened?
I happened to see Al Gore's presentation on TV, and I was so shocked.
This was his documentary.
It was before the documentary came out. So the documentary An Inconvenient Truth came out in 2006, and it was just a presentation he was making to a bunch of activists in San Francisco. And someone had taken a videotape of it, and they were showing it on Link TV, which is the public access channel for satellites. And I was watching that, and I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, what am I doing? Everyone should be working on this full time. She said, if you think it's that important, go look at it. See if you want to work on it. So that's what I decided to do.
So you dove right in and started doing
dove
your
right
own
in and started
research.
looking into it.
Okay.
And within a couple of months, I told her it's far worse. And so we have to close our company. And so we closed our company, and I want to focus on this full time. And that's what I did.
That is such a huge step. So you spent 20 years as an electrical engineer, very successful, and then you see one talk and
Right.
it opens your mind.
Right.
if I could just go back a little farther, and you're from India originally, and you're from the Brahmin caste in India, which is the caste of scholars and teachers and spiritual leaders. Did that affect at all? Did that give you the courage to move from being a worker in something very logical to something that had such grander,
soulful movement?
Yeah, exactly.
I had no idea it was going to be like that, okay? I mean, I was just looking at it as a systems problem. I'm a systems engineer. I'm an electrical systems engineer, but mainly a systems engineer, meaning I look at a problem, I look at every way in which it can be affected and see how can you devise a solution for that is robust, that no matter what happens, it will still work, right? That's my specialty. That's what I do. And I looked at this as a systems problem. So I was looking at it very cerebrally initially, right? And I said, yeah, this is probably the most complex systems problem around. And I want to devote my life to make this work, to solve this problem, right? And because I told my wife, if it doesn't matter how much money we leave our children, if this is not right, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're doing this for your children and your grandchildren.
Right. It started out by doing it for my children. I didn't have a grandchild at that time. It was for my children I was going to do this. And then I quickly realized that you have to do it for all the children of the world. It's a problem in which you are working for everyone, not just human children. You are working for all the children, including animals, right?
When you were doing your research after hearing Al Gore speak about climate change, what was it that struck you? What are some of the things that our audience might learn from and be inspired also to change their lives to help us with this climate change?
Yeah, so what struck me with what he was saying was how fast things are changing and how much damage we are causing to the environment. That's the main theme of his presentation, right? And then he had this solution, which was basically change the energy infrastructure, and that would solve the problem. And when I looked into it from a systems perspective, we are looking at every aspect in which this is affected. And I quickly realized energy is just one side of it. There's a lot more beyond that. Because the UN, when they looked into the environment in 1992, they came up with 3 major problems.
What are they?
The first was biodiversity loss, how fast we were losing wild animals. The second was ecosystems collapse, because as you kill all the animals off, the entire ecosystem dies. So you become a desert. It becomes a desert. And the third was climate change. Okay, those were the 3 major problems. And then I started looking into, okay, if you're addressing all 3 together, what is the number one thing you should do? And it became obvious you had to deal with animal agriculture.
Okay, so why was it obvious?
Because for biodiversity loss. Why are we losing biodiversity? Because we're taking away their forests. So we're taking away their land just to grow more cattle, to grow more animals. That's why the number one reason for biodiversity loss is animal agriculture. Okay, because
the animals are such a waste of land. In other words, we could get food much more efficiently if we got it directly from the ground instead of having a cow eat it and then killing the cow and eating the meat.
Yeah, see, I give an example. The analogy I use is, imagine that your mother makes 46 plates of food, leaves it in the fridge, and goes to work. And she has only 8 kids to feed. Okay? There's plenty of food in the fridge for the kids. But the eldest brother says, take 40 plates of that food and feed this animal. Okay? He tells one younger sister to go do that. And then he tells the other sister, go get some food from the animal. And you get maybe 1 plate of food from the animal.
You mean,
from 40
milk
plates.
Or from killing the animal?
From killing the animal or from dairy, all put together, you get only 1 plate of food. So now he says there are only 7 plates of food. So somebody has to starve. Okay, so we starve one person. From 46, we made it 7. Yeah. And so someone is starving. And then he says, if you don't go feed the animals, how are you going to eat? Right? So that's the system we have created. We have created a system in which we artificially create scarcity from a natural abundance.
Right. We're actually not scarce.
We're not scarce, yeah.
In focusing specifically on climate change
Mm-hmm.
and the killing of biodiversity and mass extinction, and then also our health crisis specifically, not only from the fact that we are going to run out of Medicare and completely kill that
Mm-hmm.
system, but currently we have a pretty scary virus happening in China, the coronavirus. Right. No one's talking about why do we have these viruses, and is it related to animal agriculture, and what is the pressure that animal agriculture is putting on mass extinction and some climate change, which you've just mentioned a bit, and the health crisis?
Yeah, it's all connected together. It's like our body also, once we start eating right, it heals automatically, right? I mean, it's magical how well the body heals. The same way the earth has the potential to heal if we start doing things right, start doing the right things for the earth. And that begins with by being kind to all life. So being kind to animals, don't exploit them for any purpose whatsoever. Because what do we do today? We take biodiversity, so forest area, we cut it all down and we turn that into pastures for monoculture. Basically, we are creating monocultures of cattle or cows and goats and sheep and so on. So these monocultures, they have a hard time surviving. So we have to give them all kinds of antibiotics and all kinds of things to keep them alive.
The monoculture has a hard time surviving because they're confined into one space.
Any monoculture has a hard time because nature loves biodiversity.
Yeah, because it protects, doesn't it? Just like if you have too much of the same thing, you're all vulnerable to the same thing. You all have the same weaknesses.
Right. So any monoculture, nature is trying to convert into a biodiverse culture, right? Because that's what thrives in nature. So we have to do things to prevent them from growing. So we pour Roundup and kill anything growing on the ground and just grow our soybeans, because that's the only way you can grow soybeans in the Amazon. You have to it has to be GMO soybeans.
And why is it the only way you can grow soybeans in the Amazon?
Because if you cut down the Amazon, there are still seeds in the soil, and the seeds are trying to come up, right? So the Amazon is trying to regenerate. So the only way for us to grow soybeans in the Amazon is to pour Roundup and kill everything else that could grow and just grow our GMO soybeans.
Or else it would be, quote, weeds coming up.
Exactly.
All
the so-called weeds are really the forest
that are
coming
really
back.
the actual forest coming up,
back,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So it's all connected. It's the same. Once we start doing the right thing for our body by eating the right kind of food, then we start seeing that we don't need them for our clothes. We don't need them for anything, any purpose whatsoever. So we stop hurting animals for any reason. And then the animals start thriving. And then the biodiversity starts thriving. The earth starts healing.
So to go back to the viruses, when you have a monoculture, they become more susceptible to virus, right? And disease can pass more quickly when everyone is the same.
Right.
Yeah. May I ask you about I agree with you completely that we need to treat animals. Well, obviously, we're both activists in the animal rights world. That animals need to be treated with respect and given space and have the right to live their own lives.
Right.
I worry about, and Dotsie knows this because I've brought it up on different shows, the number of people on the planet. And I believe that the number of people on the planet is one of the biggest reasons we will or will not be able to deal with climate change. Now, you come from a country that is going to be the most populated country in the world soon. Tell me what you think about that, and if your organization deals with human overpopulation.
Yeah, so we look at it from a systems perspective. And from a systems perspective, we know that once we have societies that are more equal, that have equality guaranteed, people automatically have less children. And they automatically start having less children than even replacement. So we see that in very different societies that are equal. Even I think France was like that. So it had population decline, and then the French government started giving incentives to French women to have more children. So we are doing the opposite, right, of what we should be. We should be celebrating that the fact that the children, that the population is coming down, because that means it's a stable society that has said we are done. We don't need any more. So I feel that once we have a system of normalized nonviolence, in which everyone feels like they're treated fairly, we will automatically have a reduction in population. It will automatically come from the system itself. Right now, our system is forcing an increase in population because we have a system that's based on growth. Everyone, we actually do that as people. We fire our leaders if they don't grow the economy, right? Because we see that as the sign of prosperity. And so if you force our leaders to keep growing the economy, well, they're going to grow the population too. Because that's the best way to grow the economy, is to have more people doing economic activity.
Of course, supply must have the demand. You got to have the people to demand it.
Right.
And our system does encourage it. You're very our capitalist system and our mindset is about bigger is better, more is better.
Right.
We have to keep growing is better. But a cancer cell grows without stopping, and that's so not all growth is good, but we forget that.
Yeah,
forget that.
Right.
It's a good comparison.
Speaking of systems, I want to go back to the caste system in India because I don't know much about it at all, and I feel like I'd like you to talk a little bit about it because I feel like it's a little bit like the white privilege that I have, that I was born with just by dint of my ancestors, and that maybe that's what you as the Brahmin caste from which you come is the highest caste in India, and yet you're fighting for equality.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the caste system so that our audience can understand it better and what you feel about it?
It was like growing up in it too.
Yeah.
Right. So the caste system it's something it's ingrained, right? It's basically cultural that has come in India for centuries. And I feel that it was the caste system that put a block in Gandhi's path to a non-violent world.
How is that?
Because he also wanted to create a system of normalized non-violence. He also wanted to have, people living harmoniously with nature, with animals. This was his dream too. But he couldn't figure out a way to organize human societies without using the caste system. So he said that kind of hierarchy is necessary, and therefore, he was keeping the caste system
he was actually for the caste system.
He wanted to keep it. He said there was no other way to organize ourselves as a large group of people. Okay.
He felt there always needed to be a hierarchy.
Yeah, always needed to be a hierarchy. And he said, let's just keep the caste system as is. And that didn't go well in India also. So this is why I think he fundamentally lost.
You mean there were a lot of people in India who felt that the caste system should go?
Yes, absolutely.
But it still exists.
It still exists in practice, but on paper we are trying to make it an equal society. Right?
It does all over the world. We just don't call it that.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the higher ups want to keep it that way because they want to be higher up, and it feels to me like the lower ups look up to the higher ups. Just look at the system in Great Britain,
right,
with the royal family.
Yeah,
that's just kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Like, there are these people that don't even do it, So, but it's the people, right? The lower caste systems that keep them in place, and they revere them, and are crazy about them, and love them, and want to know every single moment of their lives. So they keep it alive,
right?
Right?
Well, yeah, they actually talk about how in the United States, people who are poor often vote against their own well-being and vote for people who don't take care of poor people. And the reason they do is because they believe that they're not going to be poor for long. They're soon going to be a higher up.
Right.
So
right.
There's a lot of delusion going on among us humans.
Exactly.
Do you believe that the caste system is something that kept the population in India growing and growing and growing?
It's the same hierarchical system, right? It's anything that is all about hierarchy requires growth. Because without growth, you cannot promise the people at the bottom that there is a way up for you. So you have to have that. You have to keep dangling that to people, right? So
to keep them in their place, essentially,
right?
But them dreaming about being somewhere else.
Hope.
Right. Yeah.
That must be what.
That's
Gandhi
what
thought
drives
worked
it.
about it was the hope factor.
Right. That's what I think. That's what keeps it going like this. But we are now at a point where nature is saying no more.
Yeah.
So it's no longer just a dream. Dr. King's dream has to be implemented. We can't just say, well, it'll happen sometime later. No, it has to happen within the next 6 years. That's what I'm saying.
And ironically, the people who are the poorest will be hit, and the countries that are the poorest will be hit most dramatically by climate change. They'll have less resources to mitigate it. Is there anything happening and I'll just go back to India and then we can talk about the United States. And is there anything happening in India because they were hit last year? There was this heat wave that went up to 123 degrees Fahrenheit. And there were huge floods monsoons were worse than ever in 2015. Is there a realization in India about climate change? And is there discussion of maybe lowering human numbers and birth rates?
It's, funny thing is, when I started working on climate change, I said, I want to go to a place where I can study all of these major problems in one place. Biodiversity loss, ecosystems collapse, and climate change. And the only place I could think of was India. So I said, okay. So I went to the edge of the Thar Desert in India, in Rajasthan, where people see all three. The tiger is gone pretty much, so the jungles are dying. The desert is moving in. So you can see the desert expanding. And of course, and I went and asked them, do you think there is climate change happening? They said, of course it's happening. What are you talking about?
It's happening now.
It's happening now because they don't have AC. They're experiencing it. So they feel it. So they know things are changing. And I asked them, why do you think things are changing? And they said, because God's angry with us. I said, why is God angry with you? Because we cut down the trees. They went straight to the root of the problem. They understood.
The root of the problem being?
Our treatment of nature. This is our treatment of nature. Our relationship with nature. That is the crux of it, right? So if we have a relationship with nature in which we are treating nature as sacred, as something that we are here to take care of, everything will be fine. But we have to organize around that. Okay? Not just talk about it. We have to organize around that goal, that we are here to take care of nature. So for that, we have to tell a different story. See, that's what I had to find out for this book. Because I started working on the research for this book when my granddaughter was born.
And this book is called Carbon Yoga. For those of you not watching our YouTube channel and just listening, it's called Carbon Yoga, The Vegan Metamorphosis.
Right. See, I became vegan in 2008, very quickly after I started working on the environment, because I realized that that was number one thing you could do to address the environment.
So this is one of the systems changes that you believe is very important.
It's the foundation of the new system of normalized nonviolence is veganism. The current system of normalized violence, the foundation is violence towards animals.
If that's normalized in our society, like it's accepted.
Yeah, it's accepted widely.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be normalized, because if you cannot commit violence on animals, how can you commit violence on other people? Right? How can you have wars? How can you have endless wars? So you have to have that violence towards animals as the foundation. So this is why, it is built on that. But once you talk about veganism, this is why people in the current system don't want to talk about veganism, because it's completely antithetical to the current system. So when you say, I don't want to hurt any animal for any reason whatsoever, obviously you don't want to hurt people either, right? So it becomes a completely different system. There is no longer a hierarchy. It's about treating everyone with respect and with fairness. So creating a system of fairness right from the outset. That's what a system of normalized nonviolence is. Right?
Normalized nonviolence. Yeah. Because now we have violence that is just so normal.
Normalized. Yeah.
That's the opposite. You talk, the core, the nucleus of where you speak from is transformation.
Right.
And there's a quote on your site: "Change is inevitable, but transformation is intentional."
Right.
What does this mean in relation to climate change in the environment and what we can do?
Yeah, climate change is a signal from nature saying no more system of normalized violence. You're done. Okay? The more you continue with this, the harder I'm going to hit you. That's what she's saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's nature's. This is basically, nature is just physics, chemistry, and biology. This is just simple science.
Reaction.
This is reaction to our actions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the more we act violently towards nature, the more violently nature is going to act towards us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And not even just violence with, animals and humans, but to the actual planet and the environment. And so going in and just clearing all of the trees and not looking around to see what's alive or what still needs it,
Right.
and for animals to be grazing.
Right.
Right.
Not just
For food
clearing
for us that
trees.
we don't need.
Not only cutting trees, but pouring all these chemicals out
Yeah.
there, pollutants out
Yeah.
there, plastic out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so that's this violence we're committing on
Mhm.
nature, right? And so nature is reacting to that. So this is all just the consequences of our actions, and
Mhm.
it's gotten to a point where it's becoming louder and louder. If you listen to the wind yesterday, my God, it was horrible.
Yeah. When do you think, what year or group of years do you think was the first whisper of this?
This has been going on for a long time. Okay, so this is the research I did was to understand when did it start, and how did it start, and what can we do now to reverse it,
Mm-hmm.
to heal the planet. Okay, what can we do now? And what I realized during my research is that we are part of nature.
Mm-hmm.
We have been part of nature, whether we like it or not. We have been part of nature. And now nature has told us, you are the climate regulator species of the planet. Okay? I don't want any more ice ages, okay? Because we had 100 ice ages in the last 3 million years. And in the current interglacial period, the Holocene, we as human beings started deforesting, and we kept the temperature constant for 10,000 years. And we prevented the Earth from going back to another ice age. 5,000.
But you mean because of our deforestation?
Yes.
This was before, my understanding was that climate change was, I don't know if started is the right, but certainly accelerated in the last 130 years because of the Industrial Revolution and the burning of fossil fuels.
Right.
But you're saying it started way before
Way before. So what I'm saying is that by deforestation, we actually kept the CO2 levels constant, prevented it from going down. We kept the temperature constant for 10,000 years. And then over the last 200 years, we discovered fossil fuels. And with industrialization and technology, we have raised it by another 1 degree Celsius. We raised it by 1 degree Celsius, but in the process, we have the technology to understand what we did, right? Because without that understanding, you don't know what you're doing. So now we understand what we did, and now we have the tools and technologies to start cooling by 1
Tell me
degree.
about those tools and technologies.
So we have the internet, which allows us to organize in a decentralized fashion. Okay, so we can now create a system in which people know that they are treated fairly. It's not that you have to deceive people into thinking. You tell them all men are created equal, and then you have the most unequal society in human history. That's deception, mass deception, right? You tell them, you have an inalienable right to liberty, and then you have the most incarcerated population in human history.
You're talking about the United States of
I know.
America with these two examples, right?
I'm just saying that we have great ideals.
Mm-hmm.
So when ideals and reality don't match, there is something wrong in what we are doing, right? So as an engineer, I look at it as specification and implementation.
Mm-hmm.
When your specification doesn't match your implementation, you're not listening to nature.
So how is the internet? Is the internet showing the truth because people can communicate with each other, watch Al Gore's talks, hear us today, etc.?
Okay, without the internet, we would not have documentaries that we can put out there and reach millions of people right away. And so information is spreading. People are able to sift through and see, okay, this is real. That I was lied to. I was lied to over there. So we have an innate understanding of the truth. It's within us.
But Sailesh, I hear so many people say, I love animals, or I'd like to stop eating meat, but I just can't. Or people, I feel like they have the facts, but that doesn't move them. It might have moved you when you heard Al Gore because you have that kind of mind as an electrical engineer.
Right.
But why aren't people changing? So many people. I would say that everybody in America pretty much can see the factory farm system and not be able to justify it. They can't justify testing on animals for mascara, but yet they sit by and they continue to buy that mascara and eat that meat.
Right.
And that was us.
That was us at one time.
Yeah.
But yes, that's right. Exactly. No. Although I did stop buying mascara very, very quickly when I learned about the bunny rabbits, but the food did take longer for me for sure. But tell me about how Climate Healers educates people and then gets them to actually change.
Right. See, it's about the heart more than the mind. It's your heart. You have to have a reason from the heart to do it, right? And, we have been told that these things are necessary for you. Meat is necessary. Without meat, you're going to just wither away and die, right? You won't have enough protein. That's the story we were told. And then you discover there's actually more protein in broccoli, for calorie than there is in beef. So you've been lied to, right? So it's only through lies that you mismatch implementation and specification. Mm-hmm. It has to be lies. If you follow the truth, whatever you're saying is what you'll be doing. Okay, so we know when we have this mass mismatch between what we are saying and what we are doing, that there are a lot of lies, fundamental lies that have built our society. Okay, so we have to now identify those lies and tell people, look, there's plenty of protein in other things. There's plenty of calcium in greens. You don't need to drink milk, right? So then people realize, oh, it's not necessary. I've been lied to. Why did they lie to you? Because then they can make you sick. Then they can sell you pharmaceuticals. So you tell them the whole story and they realize that they are being lied to and they're being used. They're being factory farmed. Human beings are being factory farmed, not just animals, right? Psychologically. See, I always begin my talks when I talk to a predominantly mainstream audience. I start by asking them, how many of you would deliberately hurt an innocent animal unnecessarily? And they all say, no, we would not do that. Then I say, by definition, you're all vegans. Mm-hmm. In your heart, you're already vegan. Then it becomes their
specification,
journey.
But not yet implementation.
Right. See, then it becomes their journey, right? So then it's no longer me asking them to come along. They want to come along because they realize that they are not in alignment with who they are.
Mm-hmm. That's the only way behavior change takes place anyway.
Yeah.
But this is a tough message, speaking of talks, because you actually were invited to speak at JPL, which is what do they do?
Jet Propulsion Laboratories. Yeah. So they send rockets to Mars and rockets to Venus, etc. Yeah.
So a huge, successful, cerebral corporation that asked you to speak and then rescinded the invitation just hours before you were supposed to get on stage, because the powers that be thought you were too dangerous. Your ideas were too dangerous. What was so threatening?
We don't yet know how the invitation was rescinded. But all we know is that the host got a call from the ethics office saying it's too radical. And
you're too ethical.
You are too loving.
Too radical. I mean, because I'm only talking about kindness and compassion, and how compassion for all life is infinitely sustainable. So that's our governing principle, guiding principle. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And we were shocked. I was shocked. I didn't know. The host was shocked. People who were ready to come for the talk, they were shocked. because they got an email at the last minute saying it's been cancelled because of ethical issues. I mean, from the ethics office is saying, we don't want to talk about this. It's too radical. So now, I'm hosting a webinar for them.
And right. So like you said, the internet will get the truth out eventually.
Absolutely.
Love that.
What was your talk about, and what is it that is, you wrote a paper called Animal Agriculture is the Leading Cause of Climate Change.
Right.
Is that what's so scary?
Yeah, that was scary for them because, it completely changes their framing of climate change.
What is their framing?
The framing of climate change right now is that, you see, there are two huge machines that we have created that's causing climate change. One is the burning machine, the fossil fuel burning machine. And that's driving our industry, our cars, everything put together, right? And then is the killing machine. The killing machine where we're killing animals, we're destroying forests, that is also causing climate change. And the way it is being framed right now, we're being told to just look at the burning machine, ignore the killing machine. Okay, it's only tiny. It's only 15%. So don't look at it. We have to focus on the big majority, 85%, which is the burning machine. And that is not correct from a systems perspective, because a systems perspective, you are looking at all of the greenhouse gases, not just CO2. CO2 is just one greenhouse gas. You have to look at the methane, the nitrous oxide, and the SO2, which is the sulfur dioxide, which is an aerosol, which cools the planet. Okay, and so if you look at that, all of them put together, the burning machine actually is a net cooler right now.
Because of the sulfur dioxide?
Exactly. So every year we are pouring, 39 gigatons of CO2 into the atmosphere. We're also pouring like 300 million tons of sulfur dioxide.
This doesn't justify our burning, though.
It doesn't justify our burning.
Because it's climate change, not necessarily just climate warming, right?
Right. Exactly. Okay. No, I'm not saying burning machine should be should continue going. I'm just saying that both have to be halted. Both the killing machine and the burning machine have to be halted, but you have to halt them in the right order.
You've said that's the most important thing
right.
to shutting down these two is how.
How, yeah.
And
so how?
So first you have to shut down the killing machine, because when you shut down the killing machine, you release all this land back to nature on which we can bring back the forests. And as you bring back the forest, we start sucking down the CO2. When we start sucking down the CO2, then we can start shutting down the burning machine. Okay? Because then as you shut down the burning machine, you'll get less and less sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, which will warm the earth, right? So you need to now compensate for that by taking down the CO2 in the atmosphere first, right?
Are you talking? Is this called the term carbon sequestration?
Right.
Can you explain how that happens? Why the forests sequester the carbon? What does that mean?
So anytime a tree grows, half of its weight is carbon. Okay, and that carbon used to be in the atmosphere. So all of the carbon in a tree came from the atmosphere. So as the tree grows, you can count how much carbon has it taken away from the atmosphere. And it takes it up by sucking down the CO2, turning the carbon in the CO2 into cellulose. That becomes part of the tree's weight. So half the weight of a tree is carbon. And half the weight of a tree is above ground, half is below ground, roughly. So which means that all the above ground weight of a tree is carbon that used to be in the atmosphere. So as we cut down trees, we are sending all that carbon back into the air because the tree decays. It goes up.
And you not only cut down the tree so that the carbon is released, you now don't have a carbon sink, something that is, so it's a double bad for the climate.
Right.
Yeah. And us, because it's not releasing oxygen.
Right.
Yes, right.
So I often wonder, like, if how many every years they just actually cut down everything. I mean, we would, by definition, we would suffocate to death. Is what would be the end of humanity.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to go there, right? So we are looking at the brink.
Help.
I'm just saying we are looking at the brink, and we are saying, okay, we can't continue doing this. Right. We have to go back. So we have to now figure out how to cool the earth, because we did a great job heating the earth. See, I use the analogy of David, Michelangelo, and Michelangelo sculpting David. Imagine after he sculpts David, you find him trying to kill himself.
Who?
Michelangelo. He's killing himself, saying, oh my God, look at the mess I made. Look at the mess I made on the floor with all the marbles. shards, right? And how am I going to clean that up with a hammer and a chisel? And you tell him, Michelangelo, you need a different set of tools. You need a bucket and a shovel to clean up. And then we can all enjoy the David that you have created.
Yeah.
So as a species, we have created a David, which is a thermostat for this planet. We have done it. We did it in the last 10,000 years. Okay? We have created this homeostasis for the planet.
But then 200 years ago, we started imbalancing it.
Well, we imbalanced it in order to understand what we did. Because if we had continued doing what we were doing, we would have burnt down all the trees. Because that's what we were doing, right?
Eventually we would have, yeah.
We would have burnt down all the trees. Yeah, we would have killed all the whales long time ago. So then we stopped and we started doing this other thing. And in the process now we have all these tools and technologies. We have now satellites who are monitoring the temperature of the earth. We're monitoring every part of the earth. So we now know how to be a very effective thermostat species. We have the tools to do it. We didn't 200 years ago. We do today.
But we're not doing it.
Well, we have put everything in place. And if you look at how fast the vegan movement is growing, we're going to get there. Because you see, between 2014 and 2017, the number of vegans in the US increased by a factor of 7. Okay? So, which means if you continue with the same rate of growth, by 2020, it'll be another factor of 7. 23, it'll be a factor of 49. And by 2026, it'll be a factor of 343.
340. So how many vegans would that be in the United States?
It'll be 100%.
Oh.
If we keep the rate of growth.
Go here.
So tell us about that goal that you have for 2026.
Yeah, and the Prevent Year Zero campaign, because that's what we want to prevent, which is, I guess, just basically like a complete wiping out of life as we know it and back to year zero.
Right. The way it came about was I was reading this Living Planet report from the World Wildlife Fund, which said that between 1970 and 2012, we had killed 58% of all wild vertebrates. Okay? And between 10,000 years ago and 1970, we had killed 60% of them.
So we killed 60% of wild vertebrates in a million years.
Between 10,000 years ago and 1970.
Okay, so 10,000 years. And then in 20 years, we killed another
58%.
58%.
So which means...
Oh my gosh, we killed the same amount in 10,000 years.
We killed in 42 years.
Wow.
So that's how fast we are killing, right? So it's an exponential process. The rate
200 or so species are going extinct almost daily?
Yeah, but...
Is that about... Okay.
See, that is...
Massive killing machine.
You call something extinct when you say there is no member of that species left, right? I'm talking about biomass, the total weight. So you could actually keep a couple of tigers alive for 60 years and pretend that they're not extinct yet. So I'm talking about functional extinction. Yeah. I'm saying, if you get it to a point where there are very few of those members left, they might as well be dead, right? So this is when I realized that we are on track to wipe them out by 2026. Okay? That's how fast we're killing them. And when I made that calculation in 2016, my granddaughter was 6 years old. So I was reading a story to her in bed. And at the end of the story, she asked me, Grandpa, who were the first human beings? And I have promised her that I'll never lie to her. Okay, so I said, okay, I'm going to explain to you how it happens. Imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mother by your hand. You ask your mother to bring her mother to stand by her side. And you create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they would merge. There'll be only one single line because both lines are going to say, that's my mother too. Immediately she sat up in bed. She said, what? Are you telling me that animals are my family? I said, now that you put it that way, yeah, they are your family. She said, then why are people eating my family? Grandpa, make them stop. They're eating my family. Make them stop. And I was feeling like you. My heart was being wrenched out of my chest, So I said, Kimaya, this is what I do. I'm trying so hard to make them stop. It's my job to make them stop. She stopped crying. She looked at me. She said, this is your job? This is your job? She thought my job was to take away their food and give them good food, right? And I wasn't doing it. She said, you haven't done your job?
Oh my gosh.
When will you do your job? And I said, I have to do it by 2026. Otherwise, we are all in big trouble.
Oh,
She said, will you give me a promise? I said, yeah, I'll promise you. She said, will you give me a pinky promise? I said, yeah, I'll give you a pinky promise. She said, you can never ever break a pinky promise. And then she went to sleep. So that's when this project was born, Vegan World 2026.
And there's a
valiant
beautiful
reason.
video of Kimaya, your granddaughter, which we'll put in the show notes, talking
Yes.
about why she doesn't need animals. So we'll put that up.
It seems so clear to her.
Right.
Why do you think it's so clear to children when we explain the process as you did to her?
Mm-hmm.
In the video, people will see this, they click on it. It's just like black and white. It's the simplest, clearest thing. But then things get all muddled and it
Right.
doesn't, it's not
They don't
clear
have all
for
those
adults.
lies that we've been brainwashed with.
We also have a system where, we are in the pursuit of happiness, but the pursuit of happiness that's the specification. The implementation is the pursuit of pleasure and profit.
Sure.
Okay? So when you do a pursuit of pleasure and profit, you're looking at instantaneous pleasure, right? And we know that there is a trap. There's a pleasure trap. Instantaneous pleasure, you get a little hit and then you want more of it. Otherwise, you won't get the same hit. So you keep wanting more and more. And this is an addiction, right? And our corporations are playing on this. They're constantly getting us addicted to different things, right? So we are constantly being sucked into this pursuit of pleasure instead of pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is a state of well-being. In fact, the Buddha explained it very nicely. He said, if you chase after pleasures and if your pleasure goes up and down based on these minute things, then your happiness level will be very low. If you get to a point where none of these things matter anymore, your pleasures, you're happy independent of any of these things, then your state of happiness goes up to infinity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think, I completely agree with you about the difference between pleasure and happiness. I want to talk to you about how you are implementing this goal of in 2026, 100% of at least the United States being vegan. And you have been the executive producer of several documentaries, including Cowspiracy and What the Health, which were widely seen by a lot of Americans. And you've also...
And the world.
And the world, yes. Countdown to Zero is another documentary. And there was a documentary called A Prayer for Compassion, where I think you talk a lot about religion in there.
Right.
Do you think that getting religions on board with this is important? I mean, most religions, all religions preach compassion, but virtually almost none of them, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe just Jainism, preaches veganism.
Yeah, there is no vegan religion yet like that, okay? There is no organized religion that preaches veganism at the moment. But every organized religion, if you go ask them, should you be compassionate to animals and all life? They'll say yes. So then you ask, why are they then having a barbecue? Right? They've been taught that it's necessary. They've been lied to as well. So we're all part of the same society, right? We're all being lied to. So we've been lied to saying that this is necessary. Without it, you're not going to have protein and you're going to just wither away and die. So,
or they just like it. And they separate what
afterwards
is good.
it becomes it
Yeah.
becomes the pleasure trap also comes into play, right? So there are many ways in which we are sucked into not implementing the specifications of that religion, because if you look at the religion the way it is, every religion at its core is about compassion for all life, is about caring for others. It's about doing things for others because that's where the happiness is. Right? Is when you think outside of yourself and you start doing things for others, you're doing something that's much larger than yourself. Mm-hmm.
So where are we with religion and veganism?
It's very interesting because we, in doing the movie, we spoke to so many religious leaders and it was unanimous. veganism is at the core of every religion. It's at the core of every religion, but it's not being practiced. So then when during our interviews itself, we could see the leaders changing. They began to see, oh, wow, yeah, we hadn't thought about this. So we have had a couple of those leaders who became vegan after the interview, right? And but it's about now spreading it in the grassroots, getting other religious organizations to start screening the documentaries and then promoting vegan meals, instead of barbecues, having vegan meals
at churches and temples,
right?
Because the leaders of these religions have such an audience, and plus, just like you said when you were in India, and you said, why do we have climate change? And they said, well, because God is angry at us. Then religion would have a lot of power to encouraging people to take a step and change that system.
Right.
And even some of the kindest, most well-revealed religious leaders of our times, in the book by Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, they have a couple of conversations about what is the pleasure trap. They don't call it that, but they're mostly leaning into not eating too many animals. But they joke about, well, I just really want that cookie, or I just really want that certain sandwich, or we're all, vulnerable to that pleasure trap that just, Yeah.
But Dotsie and I are vulnerable to pleasure trap, but we found other ways to get pleasure than from killing animals and things. So we can change our idea and still get that pleasure trap, good or bad, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, by going for a hike or laughing at a comedy, or the list is endless. Hanging out with your loved ones. It's just, so many ways.
How do you recommend people who, like Dotsie and I, who understand that the systems need to be changed and are in our own lives changing? How do we get better? Are there where are our blind spots of people that you encounter, vegans, and then how do you reach non-vegans?
Yeah, well, we all have blind spots. This is why this has to be a group effort. It has to be a community effort. So this is why I went for 1 month in India on a tour of 14 different cities and 25. I had 25 different events. Spoke to thousands of people, and basically trying to get them all to first believe that this can happen. Vegan World 2026 can happen. Because once you think it can happen, you work for it. Yeah. Because until we say, well, if we think it's not going to happen, we never really put any effort into it, right? So then a lot of them started joining my base camp and started working for it, right? So this is exactly what we did during the internet days too. See, the internet days, we also thought it's going nowhere, Who's going to read things on the internet? Who's going to buy stuff off the internet? It's going nowhere. And it was a mess. When we started, it was a mess. We didn't know where we were going. So we started asking questions. We said, okay, well, where is it do we need to make things more robust? How do we make sure that everything interoperates with each other? So we created this standards body, and we came up with standards for making everything robust and talk to each other, backward compatibility, all these things we put in place. And the internet took off on its own. We didn't have to do much beyond that.
What was the year where you feel like there was enough people that believed that the internet can happen? And that's, I'm sure, when it really took off, because then, as you're saying, that's when the most people started working towards it happening.
Right. I would say it was 96.
Okay.
1995, 1996. 1995, there was an article in Newsweek saying the internet is going nowhere. Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And in 96... that's when I proposed the digital connections. And at first people laughed at me saying, oh.
When you say you proposed the digital connections.
So we used to have connections between, on wires that were analog. Basically like an analog phone.
A dial-up.
Like a dial-up. It wasn't dial-up. It was a high-speed connection, 100 megabit connection, but it was analog.
So right after dial-up, it was a little bit, okay.
It was computer-to-computer connections. See, the backbone had to be strong. Without a strong backbone, the internet would have failed. So that backbone was 100 megabit and it was all analog in 95. And so I proposed a digital connection that would run 10 times faster and would be very robust. And people laughed at me. Said, what? How can you? We are having trouble getting 100 to work. You're talking about doing 1,000 on it, right? And with this fancy technology that we don't even understand. But they let me play. They said, okay, you can form a study group. And if you can convince enough people, you can have a standard. So by the end of that year, there were a lot of people coming to my meetings. And so they realized, oh, this is serious. There are a lot of people who believe it can be done. And I think for Vegan World 2026, we are in exactly the same place right now. A lot of people now think, hey, it can be done. I think we should put our effort into it. So people are now, meeting once a week, meeting once every 2 weeks. And, it's happening much, much faster than the internet. The internet, we used to meet once every 4 months. And we used to have interim meetings once every 2 months, right? So, and I remember, it's 1 week before the meeting, I would do all the work that was needed for that meeting, right? Until then, I was doing other things. Now, people are working every day, they're figuring out things, and adding things on Basecamp. So it's happening really fast. But at the same time, it's a much more complex problem, right? So it needs to happen really fast. So
think
I
what happened
feel
from
like
96 to 2002 in just 6 years of the internet. I mean, that was just a widespread. Everybody knew how to use it and had one by 2002.
Exactly.
2002, 2003, I overheard someone say, I cannot live without the internet. And I told him, you didn't even know what it was 10 years ago.
Wow. So the promise to your granddaughter, how are we doing? Because we have 6 years.
Yeah. So I'm going on a Pinky Promise tour.
Yes.
Of America, starting in April. So we are organizing the tour. It's about 2.5 months we're doing. And Kimaya will be joining me towards the end of the tour. And my wife will be joining me. So we are just talking to people saying, first, here is a path. We think we can do it. Okay. But I want vegans to be involved. Please join Basecamp and start whatever your talent is, because there's so many study groups. There's so many things that need to be done. You can put your effort into whatever you think you can make a difference in. But all of us have to come together and say it can be done. And then we'll do it.
So where can people, if they're interested in joining a Vegan World 2026.
Yeah, where is this base camp?
Where should they go?
See, if you go on climatehealers.org or veganworld2026.org or preventyear0.org, you will see a pop-up first. And if you click on that pop-up, it's the survey for Basecamp.
Great.
Oh, I saw that. Okay.
Great.
So fill out the pop-up.
Yeah, fill up the pop-up.
Okay.
Then it'll get to one of us, and and we'll put you on Basecamp, and we'll put you on the appropriate task forces that you said you want to work on, and you are there.
And we're changing systems.
We're changing systems.
Sailesh, thank you so much for all the change that you're doing. I've learned a lot actually talking to you, because I don't have a mind that usually thinks in terms of systems, and so thank you. The specifications to implementation.
Right.
That was it. So I'm going to start trying to align what I do with what I believe with what I do. Right.
You're pretty good at that already, I must say myself.
I can always get better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can.
We all are. We are all, I say we are all on a journey coming home to who we really are.
Yeah.
We are a caretaker species.
Yeah.
And we have been predators for so long. We have to come back to a caretaker species.
That's part of your transformation.
Homo.
Yeah.
Ahimsa.
Ahimsa.
Right.
Homo sapiens to Homo ahimsa.
Right. That's hard to say too.
Yeah.
Thought it was going to come out just fine. But
well, you might not have been able to speak at JPL right now, but I know you're speaking to thousands of people, and we're so glad that you came and spoke with us on this platform, which will go out on the internet, where the truth,
the speedy internet, thanks to you.
Thanks to you, and where the truth will be told.
Thank you. There is the truth will come out. The truth will triumph, ultimately.
Yeah.
This is
as will love.
As will love. It's the same.
Thank you.
Truth is love.
Thank you
for having me.
It's really amazing.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good,
please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info, and you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.